Jessica LaRusso from Workplace Education Manitoba, and I'd like to invite you to the webinar titled Google Suite, and this is our second day. And so before I introduce our instructor, I'd like to review some features that you're going to be using during our webinar. Now, I know that I repeated some of this information yesterday, but I want to make sure that you have all the information in front of you. There are 3 icons at the top of your screen. One is a emoji, which most of you utilized, with a smiley face, applause, for example. So that smile emoji opens up so many different icons that you can use. Also, there's a question mark box in blue with a question mark. Please use that box to ask your questions. Yesterday, when you had placed a question in the chat, I just copied it into the question box so that we were able to answer those questions at the end of the webinar. And lastly, there's the telephone. So if you have audio concerns or you just need to switch to your telephone because there's internet difficulties, which of course from time to time we have, you're welcome to do that. So as I had said, the emoji opens up so many various expressions. You can use that. We have the question mark box, which we talked about in the telephone, of course. Lastly, your instructor may use or ask you to answer questions in the chat, for example, and please do so there for interaction. And if you have a question, I will put it in the question box for you. Now, in the chat link that you have, I put 2 different support links for you. So if you have a moment, you can copy and paste that onto your computer if you need some more support, technical support. Also, I have shared my email address, jlorusso@wem.mb.ca. So if you have questions or technical issues or something's up, you're welcome to email there. I'm going to be checking it live along with the chat and the other supports. So I'm there with you. And also I left my telephone number. I will not be answering my phone, though you can text, but you know what? Please email me is a lot easier, but some people are on a telephone, so the text option is available for you. So moving forward, I am thrilled to have Rachel Amy back with us today. She is an amazing instructor with an impressive professional career. She's engaged in student development and adult education from kindergarten all the way up to adult education, of course. She's proficient in administrative, marketing, communication, also computers. I know that she'll she's very modest. She'll tell you that she's not, but she is an amazing person, and she just finished her master's degree in leadership. So I'm thrilled about that. So right now, give her an applause and help me welcome Rachel Amy, who's going to talk about Google Suite. Rachel, you have the floor. Welcome.
Thank you. Actually, the applause, let's give the applause emoji to Jessica, because without her, none of this would be happening. So we're so glad you're here, Jessica, and you just have the best personality. Is that not the best voice to wake up to for a webinar? I love it.
Thank you. All right.
So, like she said, I'm Rochelle, and actually, I didn't finish the degree yet, Jessica. You gave me too much credit. I still have a thesis to hand in, so I'm working on that. I'm glad you're here today. Jessica's going to load up our PowerPoint and we're going to dive in. And before we start today's stuff, I just thought let's cover off a couple of the questions that we talked about yesterday. So those questions, one of them was about Opal, and I dug in a little bit and found out really how you all use that. And it sounds like it's a shared drive. And in that, it won't give you access directly to your Google Drive. So in that case, you're going to want to download a Google Doc to your actual computer, and then you could upload it into Opal. I will cover that when I do my screen share with you on using Google Sheets. I will cover the download, upload, or whatever. Sometimes managing that in Drive can be overwhelming or confusing. So you probably have one of these, the mighty USB stick. And that's just to say that you can always save any type of file to one of these and then input it into your local computer that you're working off of. So that's one option if you want to get things into Opal that way. The other thing is we had a question from a Chromebook user yesterday about transferring the files from Google Drive and Chromebook into another platform. And there too, I will cover that and show you how to keep your Excel format while you're working in Drive. But the USB is another option for that too, if you wanted to use it. And then moving into a little bit of your homework and what that looked like. Yesterday's homework was kind of foundational. It was making sure you had the Chrome on your computer. It was making sure you had it on a taskbar or desktop, an easy place to use it and access it from. And then I asked you to dig in a little bit into internet searches. And I wondered if anyone had picked up a new tool that they hadn't been using otherwise, whether you just read it in your student handbook or you actually tried it online. Could you please, in the chat to the left side of your screen, could you please let us know one of the tricks or the internet search techniques that you used? Someone set up their Gmail account. Good for you. That's awesome. Make sure you note that password somewhere to make your life easier. Awesome. Oh, looking for retirement condos. Oh, that would be a great search to do. The quotations is such a good one. I love using that one. And someone was looking up the flowers and the minus operation to eliminate. I love that one too. Yep, and the or function. I love those. I use the quotation mark one a lot because if I need that exact phrase, if I'm trying to find Tim Hortons and not Tim Mortons or other things that could come up, I always put that in quotation marks so I'm guaranteed to get the full phrase. And yeah, that minus function is fun. I sometimes forget about it, but it's so true because when you add that minus function to it, you could eliminate so much of the garbage that's associated with a same acronym or a same type of industry or whatever. I love what you guys were able to do, and just to try something new is the key because those functions continue to sort of morph. Some of those have been around a really long time. Some of them are a little bit newer. And so we're going to find that as we're using our digital technology skills, there's lots of times when we just sort of pick up that new tool and throw it in our toolkit because you never know when you need that. So let's dive in today. I want to cover getting into the actual products that Google's released for people to use on their open software. I'm glad we covered the point that we're not just talking about surfing the net when we're using the Google products, but we're talking about actually using products that are software and that allow us to collaborate with others, not worried about upload speeds and download speeds and losing formatting and content, but just being able to share a document in perfect condition and collaborate with someone else. So today we would go over Google Docs in a way to solidify some of that knowledge. We'll go into Google Sheets and we'll spend a little bit more time there. And then Google Slides, will just show the settings to go into that, because when you know how to enter and save a document in any one of these software applications, you really can do it in all of them. So then at the end, we'll talk about the collaboration and the sharing settings and just give you to a place of confidence that if you shared a document, you would know what it is you're sharing and how much access someone has. So of course, we did talk about Google Docs and how that's really a software program that you can access from any computer. As long as you can get online, you can access your Google Docs. That being said, once you have done that from being online, you are able to download it and use it offline. So maybe in the case of traveling, like I talked about yesterday, where I could not take a computer with me, travel to Africa, and access my same Google Docs because they're in my drive. Similarly, I could access them on the airplane where I don't have internet access, because I do have an option in all the Google software where I can download that document and work on my device and not have to be connected online. It's just all the functionality and saving and collaboration. That part all happens while you're connected to the internet. So when we're talking about using Google Docs, we can access it by the app or its own software, where we could just type in docs.google.com right in an address bar and it would take us there. Or we might have a shortcut app on our computer already installed. You certainly could click on that and get to it. I just like the best practice of using the Google Drive. And so that again is drive.google.com, or accessing it through your waffle in the top right-hand corner of your Google screen. And when I go into Drive, I recognize that I have options to create something new. So the big New button at the top left side brings up this drop-down folder of, do I want the new folder or a new file? And if I want a new file, what program is it that I want to use? So if it were Google Docs, I could click on that particular software and it would allow me to open it up. So again, we're not opening a new window, we're not launching a new software program that's running in a background somewhere. It's just opening it up in my next tab in my web browser that's open. So I would have a Google Docs one open. What I do love about it is the sample that I've given you on the screen shows just blank things that I opened. So I opened Google Docs to create a new document, but I didn't name it or do anything to it. So that's why in my tab, you can see the word Google Docs and the blue icon. You can see the word Google Sheets and the green icon. That's because those are blank. I haven't named them anything. But as soon as I name them, the name appears up in that tab. So I can have my 20 tabs open and be working on multiple reports and projects and curricula, and I can see in the tab which file name it is. I love that feature. When you go in, of course, you get template options, just like you do in other software programs. So lots of templates available in Docs. Poke around and play with them. If you're a brand new user with Docs, I would say avoid the templates, because sometimes you could struggle with where they've put the margins and tabs and columns, and it's a little bit more intuitive sometimes to start with the blank document, which I love because I love a clear canvas. When you go in, here is your best practice. One thing that's a little bit different about Google Docs is that it's not like Microsoft when you're saving. When you're in Microsoft, you can work away, and at the very end, you click the X to leave, and it asks you, are you sure you want to go? Because you didn't hit the save button. Do you want to save your work? Google's a little different. It's not going to ask you whether you want to save or not. It's going to automatically save your work. And if you don't name it up in the file name bar, Google will just call it untitled. And if you made 3 untitled documents in a row, you'll have untitled document 1, untitled document 2, untitled 3. And it will just put them in a general place in your drive, but not organize them for you. So after you've named it, in this case, I've called it Google Docs formatting slide. I also want to assign it to its folder. What I love about this approach is the rename and the moving of folders is so simple. I can decide I don't like that name anymore. I want to rename it. It's one touch. It's no right clicking. It's no renaming. It's just changing it and moving it to a folder. So when we go into Google Docs and look at it, we're looking at it as just basic word processing. So we have the ability to change fonts, positioning on a page, inserting tabs and headers and page numbers. We can include drawings and other images. The one big distinction where you might look for something to use in Google Docs and you won't find it is a text box. Now, I love my text boxes. I know I mentioned that yesterday. I feel like man cannot live without a text box. And there's just a workaround in Google. They give you more options of how you can use a text box and what could be in it. And so they do that in Google Drawings. So it's like another tab would open, you're drawing and creating and cropping and morphing something in that side panel that you're doing in Google Draw, and then you're placing that into Docs as if it's an image or a photo. So the text box function, you won't really find it. It works a little bit differently, and it's kind of what I would change if I could change that for Google, and I would simplify all the options that they give us. If we were to move into looking at Google Sheets, there's something to be said for how Excel works and something to be said for how Google works. And like I said yesterday, our learnings in this isn't really to prove that one's better than the other. It's just to show that they're actually asking you to make different decisions in how you use their software. So I'm going to take you into a Google Sheet to look at it, and it's not going to have any more options of things you can do than using Microsoft Excel. It's not like, oh gee, they added 13 functions that make my spreadsheet so much better. Actually, they sort of took some away. They simplified the whole system of spreadsheets. And I would say with my learners in the West Center, I see that a lot of people are scared of spreadsheets because it touches on not just digital technology, but it also deals with numeracy skills. And that can be intimidating for a lot of people. So one thing that I found in teaching some learners is that when they see Google Sheets for the first time instead of Microsoft Excel, it's so simplified in what the choices are and how the page formatting looks that they get a little bit less of the learner overwhelm, and they're sometimes a little more inclined to try and think that maybe they could be a spreadsheet user. So if that's you, you could give me a crying emoji if you find that you just don't love spreadsheets, they don't float your boat. And maybe in exploring what Google Sheets could do, you would discover how you can go in and set up a simple type of spreadsheet that could benefit you personally. And, I just give, like, if I don't have the emoji on my screen, I can't do it, but, I'd give you like the crying emoji back, because spreadsheets don't float my boat, but I do love what Google's done with it to make it user friendly. So again, it's a spreadsheet software now that can go anywhere, and asking people to engage with the spreadsheet that's set up from no matter where they are. So again, I would go through that portal of going to it through the drive. I wouldn't be looking up sheets.google.com or clicking on my app. I'd be going through the drive, and I'd be selecting new, and then I would be picking Google Sheets, because that's where I can control better seeing what I already have. If I were to have expanded this view for you into my drive, you'd see that to the right and the bottom of it, I actually have many files and folders that are organized for me. So it shows me what I've opened recently and so on. And so I want to give you a glimpse at that just now. So I'm going to flip over to just share my screen with you. And in doing that, you're going to get a chance to just look at me navigating a little bit through one of the spreadsheets. So here I am in my spreadsheet, and Jessica, you could just answer me verbally that you're viewing it nicely.
It's perfect.
I'm on the right tab. I can't see that flip over, so thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.
So this is an example for you of a way you could play around with a spreadsheet in a way that might be interesting or helpful to you in your own personal life, so that you can translate that into your workplace. So this is just a mock-up of something I created this past hockey season. I have 3 kids who all play hockey, all AA, and they were quite intense schedules. And so I found that grandparents and aunts were texting me every single day asking who was at what rink, and it was impossible to keep up with all the chat. So instead, I just went in, I made a Google Sheet, and I shared it with the 5 people who were asking me the questions about it, and it looked sort of like this. So this gives you an idea of how spreadsheets basically just organize information into rows and columns, and the purpose of that is twofold. One purpose is so that you can do calculations. So you could add, subtract, divide, multiply. You could come up with percentages. You can do analytics, and you can figure out who, in this case, who played the most and what time of day did things usually happen at. And you can do all kinds of analytics. So spreadsheets want to offer you all of the math functions of a calculator without you actually having to know the calculation. The other thing spreadsheets want to do for you is they want to sort for you. So they give you the ability to move around. Let me sort everybody by child name. Let me sort by team or by day, or I can sort really in any function I want. So if we think that really a spreadsheet is just a glorified table. You've probably used a table in Microsoft Word, and spreadsheet just sort of takes that up a notch so that it says, hey, let me organize and add things up for you. So just a couple tips and tricks. I want to show you when you go in to your file and you're wanting to actually name things. I guess I didn't sign in. Let's go in this way. Now I'm signed in, so I have access to, oh, sorry folks. I was signed in earlier and I popped myself out. This is actually a good example for you that maybe you want to look at your sheets and access your data and you hit a roadblock. You can't see any information in your drive. That's really the obstacle, the only obstacle that you'll ever come up against, is that you haven't signed in yet. So it can't give you permission to the file until you've logged in with your Google ID or your email ID. I love the rename in this. I love that I can just go in and decide, oh, I didn't like, some people get offended that you call your kids kids and they want you to say the word children. So maybe I want to just change the title. It's that simple. I just start typing and hit enter. I don't do any rename function. And similarly, I could just with one click decide where is it that I want to take it. And I can just navigate through any folder and add it anywhere I want, or create new subfolders in just one click. Again, not a lot different from Microsoft, where you have the same ability to move and resave. It's just that the way Google wants you to just rewrite and click right on the top is just so easy. My suggestion to you is when you're creating new files, you may want to take a piece of paper Post-it note and just stick that Post-it note at the top of your screen when you're working. Because maybe I'm going to create multiple things in one. I want to set myself some kind of reminder so that I get in the habit of naming and filing instantly, and it just creates a lot of peace in life if you do it up front. When I go in, I have the ability to keep adding to the schedule. So of course I can just type in and continue to add different games and different events that are happening. And you can see that I have a default setting on my system where the font that I type in as my default font looks a little different from the other font that I had a little bit higher. So one of the tricks, and Microsoft has this too, where it looks like a paintbrush, is you can choose your format painter. So maybe I like how I have Sophie and this row. I love how the font is bigger and a little bit of a crisper font, but this Johnny font down here is kind of more difficult to read, particularly for my older viewers that I'm sharing the spreadsheet with. I want larger font. So I like what I have in Sophie. I could click the picture of my paint roller, and then anything that I touch will be converted to that same format. If I want to convert a lot of things, I could touch Sophie, or let's say I want to touch up here where Johnny is, and I want to copy that formatting. I can take it and select a whole range and apply my formatting instantly. So I no longer am going up and clicking through all of my font sizes and all of that. So theoretically, you might do that at the outset, where in your very first cell, you're choosing how you want everything to go, and you're applying that to your whole table by dragging and so on. But that's just sort of a helpful tool for afterwards to fix things. Same as my verses column, which is hilarious. If you have kids, you know that verse became a verb now. So they're like, oh, who are we versing? which I find totally hilarious. Same thing here though, maybe I want the same formatting that Rink is, and I can move it over and just apply it to my whole thing. A word of caution in Google or Word or in Microsoft is that if you select a whole row by picking, let's say, the number 2 and clicking on it, that's going to affect your whole row indefinitely to the right. So it's going to make printing tricky later in how you select the size of what you want to print. Or if I pick, say, all of column C and I applied something like a highlight color in that, that's going to go indefinitely for the 5 million cells that I'm allowed to have in my spreadsheet. So just a word of caution that selecting a whole column for adding color is not really the best scenario. You'd be better off just to drag the particular cells that you want to affect and do that with. We can set up cautions. Sometimes I needed to flag certain things for people, and I discovered that we played a lot of 7 o'clock p.m. games, and so 7 o'clock a.m. on there got totally missed by Granny, and she showed up at the rink that night and there was no one there. So I can apply some tools to help make that easier, that I don't have to go in and do all the time. And so maybe I want to just go ahead and add my conditional formatting. And conditional formatting is just, I'm going to put a condition to what the formatting should look like. In this case, I've told the spreadsheet everything in column E is what I want that applied to. And I want to save someone from showing up at the wrong time. So I'm going to say if I type anything in that column that says AM instead of PM, I want to turn that to purple and then hit done. So I get to see that now anytime I put a morning game in, it's going to automatically highlight it and say, hey, this is unusual. Similarly, I can go ahead and change something or make a new entry. And when I do that, because the AM is in there, as soon as I hit enter, that conditional formatting rule applies. I can go ahead and undo all that too. You can remove your conditional formatting if you change your mind. And this is really important in quotas. If you have deadlines and targets to meet, sometimes if you don't meet the $10,000 quota, there's a problem. And so you need to flag that. So you can set those rules up so that if the number's above or below something, it's colored. Or you can take those rules a little farther into the ones I love that are like if calculations that say, hey, if this says 3 o'clock p.m., then something needs to happen in the next cell over. Adding things like our columns and so on is relatively easy. We get to do a lot with our right clicking. So right clicking in, and let's say we want to tabulate goals, for example. My daughter did this because she's just a little bit of a keener, and so she needed to have her own stats that she kept on herself. Trust me, it was not us. We did not ask her to do this. It was her own thing. But let's say we're talking about a lot of goals. We could skip some. We don't even have to put a 0 in there. We can say we got a 6-goal game. Imagine that one. And we could just have our random types of numbers calculating all this for us. Well, we got the same one-click function as Microsoft Excel, but what I want you to notice is that up here in the ribbon, this whole area with all my choices is a ribbon. And look at how simple that is. If you've seen Excel, you know how complicated that looks. And you know that in Excel, every time I click on a different tab, my ribbon changes and I get a gajillion options. Well, here, when you click on a different tab, you get a drop-down menu. Your ribbon never changes. So they keep the ribbon to the basic functions to make a spreadsheet easy. And that includes your summary calculations. You don't have to find them in a tab. They're all right here in the same looking icon that Microsoft uses. So let's say I want to have my total. I probably would want it at the bottom. So let's say I want to have my total there. The cell that I click in this case, H14, is where I want the calculation. So with just 2 clicks, I can add that in. One click to say, give me a summary, a second click to pick all the cells that are affected, and boom, it's there. All I did was select and hit the enter key. Because I liked that and it added it up for me in a way that was helpful, I might want to do the same thing in my assist column. So instead of redoing that same format, I would say, hey, Google Sheets, in this cell, you figured out that I wanted you to add vertically. I want you to figure that out and add vertically here for me. So I'll pick the cell where I liked what it did, and I'll drag it to the side and say, copy that plan. And as you can see, those 2 digits are 2 different numbers, meaning the 17 is adding up everything right above it, and the 10 is adding up everything right above that column. So we do love that function because we can shortcut our ways, and I'm not saying Excel cannot do that. What I am saying is that finding your calculations in Google Sheets is just an interesting thing, and their help looks like this. Down in the bottom, we have this Explore button. It does a different thing in it does a different thing in Google Docs. And tomorrow we're actually going to look at that in Google Docs, and you'll get to see how cool the Explore button is in there. But in Excel, the Explore button helps you with all your calculations. The other things that are easy to manipulate is just the sizing that you want to do everything in. And of course, in both of the programs, for the competitors here, you always have the ability to put a summary anywhere. So here I have game points and I have game assists, but maybe I actually want a season tally. So maybe I want season points because maybe I'm crazy like my daughter. Well, I don't have to have my summary calculation anywhere near those numbers. I can ask my spreadsheet to record my number way over here in K17, and I can just tell it I'm going to want a summary, and I want you to pick from these 2 cells, and as soon as I hit enter, I get my total over there. So you do have the freedom to put that anywhere you want. It does the same thing with charts and pie graphs. You can add all those in, which is great. And in so doing, every time I do this, it's saved instantly. So particularly if I'm doing a lot of data entry, I was working with a customs brokerage that was doing a lot of really intense data entry during pandemic actually, and it was super time sensitive, super critical on what they were doing. And one of the features that they loved is that they could look at all of their edits and who did them. So we can click into our version history and we could pick any version that we used and basically go back and rescue ourselves from any damage that the person on the shift the night before had done for us. So that whole edit feature of who did what is important. Now, a little privacy tip for you is just that in working offline, I would be able to type in this whole spreadsheet and then I could bin it. I could throw it in the garbage and get rid of it. We know that we can recover things from our trash, so we never really put sensitive things in our trash. But let's say this was so private that I still wanted to bin it. I could just take the whole sheet, I could delete all the data and then save it as an empty document and then put it in the trash. That works a little more easily with Microsoft than it does for Google because of this whole function of being able to save every edit by every person and track where they came from. The other thing that they've made pretty simple, this is just really getting my goat as a little bit of a perfectionist, so I just had to fix that formatting there. The other thing that they made pretty simple is really the freeze panes. In Microsoft, you do have to search through all your tabs to find them and to make them happen. In Google, maybe I recognize that I'm going to be scrolling down and adding many things. And now if I were to start typing in here that Johnny had a game, I'd be like, what came first? Is this the rink? Is this the time? I forget. I don't even know the order. So maybe I want to do a freeze pane so that I can always have this row number 2 and see it no matter where I'm typing. So I just want to put my cursor or select a cell right underneath the row that I want to keep, and I can choose to freeze it. So I'll say I want to freeze the first 2 rows so that I always see it. And then we see this dark blue line appeared right underneath all of row 2. So now if I had a really long list and wanted to scroll down, no matter where I go on my spreadsheet, I can always make sure that I know what my column headings are. Another same function, you can do it in Microsoft also, but I'm just giving you a bit of orientation because I find that this is the program that if we're brave and we try it, we get to experiment with a few things that we might not otherwise have done. We can also add colors and copies, so recognizing that when we're in a spreadsheet, we're never just in one sheet. I guess if we want to be, we are, but we're really in a book. We're in a book that has many, many pages in it. And so we get options right down here with these tabs on the bottom where we can make more pages in our book. So I could make a duplicate page, and I rely on this heavily because if schedule, for example, in my first tab is the one that I know is right, or it's the one that someone else shared with me, or it's a template, I hardly ever want to change that one, and I automatically make a copy. And then in my make a copy tab, I'm free to change it as much as I want, and I know the original is untouched, and I don't have to search for previous editions. So here, I get to right click and get my secret menu of the things that I'm able to do, and renaming the name of that particular sheet is pretty easy. So I'm going to call it the child name of Taylor, and I want him to just have his own, I just want him to have his own page. So I'm going to have everything related to Taylor in there, and I will go ahead and modify. I could choose to just get rid of entire rows and just make everything about Taylor. So in setting that up for him, when I recognize that I'm going to start to have multiple tabs, I might want him to look unique. So again, with my right click, I'm going to want to give him a custom color, and maybe the team he plays for is red, so I'm going to give him a red underline. If I wanted to make another copy just for Sophie, I could do my right click, I could come up with a duplicate. There again, I have another copy. I do my right click and I want to call it Sophie because I want it to be only about her. And I can give her her own color too. Google loves the colors, and it shows up again in tomorrow's discussion about organizing our drive. I'm going to give Sophie the hideous color of yellow. She wore an awful yellow jersey this year that was hard to look at. And you can see I could keep organizing all my multiple pages. So those are individual sheets that are all connected in one place called this file name. And if there's one organizational error that we tend to make, it's that we might open multiple spreadsheets and be trying to contain all this data in separate sheets when really we could have them down here in our tabs and try putting a lot of things together. The thing that's helpful about that is when we go to share it, we might only have to share one file instead of having to share a whole folder or a whole drive. And if at any point I decide I don't like my order because I find I'm always in Taylor's schedule, I can move him to the front. I just click on any one of them that I like and I drag it to the left, or I drag it to the right, and I can reorder all of my different pages. So I'm going to flip back into the presentation because that will give me an ability to see if there's questions happening. And just before I do, I want to highlight the share button. So by just hovering over top of it, I get to find out that if I want to do something in this button, anyone who has my link can access it. They don't have to sign in a particular way. So right now you get to see that I've shared this document with someone named Gerald Amy. So that shows up here that I've already done that. And it shows that I've set a setting here that anyone I give the link to can look at my sheet. I can of course change that anyone can do other certain things. I like this option here that my link sharing is off, so Gerald would not be allowed to go and share it with 10 other people. It would have to come through me, so I would have control on who could actually access the sheet. So that's a good setting to be mindful of. And if I click on Gerald, I could change his access at any time. So beside his identity, I could go ahead and change whether he owns it, writes in it, can edit, can view it. Only thing to note here is that this edit function gives someone privileges that make it harder to take away. So if you want to give them a timeout, they can't see it after a week, for example, that's harder to do or impossible to do if they have edit functions. But with all the other functions, it's easy to time them out. So I'm going to pop back over here. And we're going to get back into our PowerPoint. So when we're seeing the different things that sheets can do, give me a thumbs up if you feel like maybe you'd be willing to try out making a spreadsheet. Oh, look at you, confident, smart people. I'm so proud of you. That's awesome. And I know that as Wemians, we're really concerned with workplace education and making sure we have skills so that people can succeed in the workplace. And one of the things I'm noticing with my West Center learners is that we have a lot of curricula that has to do with analyzing data with, say, how to make a spreadsheet for fruit sales and things like that. And I find that as soon as they can personalize it and make something that they think they could benefit from, like let's say it's a hockey schedule or whatever, I often let them do that first. People can do planning of their garden. They can create a household budget. They can do different things that involve calculations and so on. And when they get to do that about something that's interesting to them, it sort of sticks. So my encouragement to you might be to just tackle doing a Google Sheet that could be relevant to what you're doing for WEM. Maybe you want to track classes and curricula you have to come up with, or learners and outcomes, and just play around with it and see if it's something that you could get to feeling comfortable with. So I was able to show you what I could do just quickly manipulating a Google Sheet, and then in your homework, you're going to see that you get to do the same thing. We're going to take a quick peek at Google Slides. We won't spend much time on it compared to what we just looked at with Sheets, but I find Slides isn't as scary for people. The funny thing is, I'm the guiltiest of all the guilty, that if I ever have to do a presentation, I tend to just call it PowerPoint. Can you give me an emoji if you find you just tend to say the word PowerPoint too? It's like Kleenex. Like, do you need a Kleenex? We never offer someone a facial tissue. We offer them a Kleenex. And I find that if I'm going to present somewhere, people will always ask, do you have a PowerPoint? And so that brand name just sticks. And I'm sorry if even in today's presentation, you find that I might say the word PowerPoint. But basically, we know that to mean a presentation. Google Slides is that version of PowerPoint. It's just they've created a similar thing. Again, I would go into it through accessing the drive and clicking New, and then creating a Google slide. If I already had one created, I would find a version of that also already in my Google Drive. So I can go into Drive and access a file that I've already made. So once you go in, it looks very, very similar to PowerPoint. They give you all kinds of themes that you can steal colors and formatting and so on. And off to the right, you get to select which theme you want. Makes it pretty easy, and it'll create the multiple slides for you. Your assignment today actually is to make something in Google Slides where you're translating some of the work that you've done in the other software programs. And so don't be afraid of it if you haven't used it. I just want to say I'm not looking for animation and all the transition of slides to make this a really cool presentation for me. That part doesn't matter. I just basically want you to touch on it so that you can see that when you're making multiple files in different software programs, you'll end up having 3 different files at the end showing up in your Google Drive. And then you're going to be able to see the different icons and how to organize them into one folder. So the goal in the homework is really not to impress me with a great slideshow that has all these bunny rabbits running across the stage. It's just to sort of collate all your information into one place. So there too, don't forget to name it. And in what you do that you're going to share with me, include your name also in that title. So you can call it whatever presentation, by whomever, or just call it by your own name. That's fine. So when we're looking at sharing things in your assignment today, I do ask you to share something with me. And so I just want to spend a moment looking at that. The collaboration aspect of this just cannot be overlooked. It's something that you could share even with your students. So you could be operating in a classroom setting, everybody's working on the one document together. And the cool thing is you get to see who's doing what. So remember when I was screen sharing with you, you could see that whenever I would select a cell, it would highlight it in blue. Well, if you were in the document with me, you would get a different color. And I would see that your color was pink. And wherever you were typing, I could see that there was this pink happening in another cell. And it would also show me the name of who was doing it. So if we were doing some live projects and live data entry and doing that together, I would see the live conversation. And I think Melody's with us today, and Melody can give me a thumbs up if she remembers this, that just maybe a week or two ago, we did this live together, and it made our phone call brilliant. Because we were on the phone trying to solve a problem with registrations and collating data that we were looking at. And so did the phone call, did the live collaboration inside of a Google Sheet. And while we're talking, she's typing, I could see what she was doing and she could see what I was doing. And I'm like, oh, you meant you wanted it there or added in that way and so on. And she was saying the same thing. So you could do that verbally or non-verbally, just working together. Did file sharing not used to feel like this? Like, please, crying emoji. If you've ever had to upload a file and it took your email program like 35 minutes to upload it. I've had that happen only at the end. I feel your tears, people. I've had this happen only at the end for the email to program to tell you, actually, that was too big to send. We're not able to do it. Email's gotten a bit smarter that they at least offer to compress our files for us. But we can easily share or painfully share by email. Sometimes it's painful to share on a company network because maybe something like the Opal drive that you use, you know that it's a place you could put something for your colleagues to access and look at, but maybe you only wanted certain ones to do it. So sometimes on the network, we have certain problems. I know in one company I worked with, I had a whole host of shared drives. And so I had to constantly be looking for, okay, wait, that's the drive I share with those 10 people. That's the drive I share with those 10 people. And it can just be a lot. So really, Google wanted to just make that easier. Microsoft did step up to the plate and they started getting their act together. And now, of course, with their One and their Teams and their 365, you can do this with them also. A little less intuitive, but it's absolutely possible. So sharing a whole entire drive, I could take my whole drive, everything I have, and I could choose who I want to share that with. Or I could just pick one particular folder, or in most cases, I want to pick one document or one file to share with maybe a couple colleagues or so on. I think you can share with like 50 people to collaborate on. There is a limit to how many people can actually write and edit in a document, but it's not limited to how you could post that and share that for viewing. And Google even gives you an opportunity to just put your file online. So that's often a teaser ability that we have with our information. So that say WEM wanted to advertise, there would be ways to advertise online, but one of the ways that companies are using right now that doesn't cost them any advertising dollars is they decide, I just want to share a document. So maybe I'll write a document and it might have how to use Excel. And the whole document is an instruction manual on how to use Excel. Well, I can share that to the internet so that when people are searching, how do I use Excel? My file comes up as something they get to look at, and then I get to indirectly advertise for Workplace Education Manitoba. So in setting my file sharing capabilities, I want to be mindful of what's the name of the file I have and what folder am I sharing it in. And then I want to take a look at my share button. I get to see at a glance that it's private only to me. Now, I did have someone in our group yesterday who said they do use a Chromebook and they're comfortable with a Chromebook. One advantage you get with the Chromebook is at this stage in your hovering, you actually get to see more information on who you've shared with and what the settings are. But nonetheless, you hover over and then click over onto sharing. And when you do that, it automatically asks you, who do you want to share it with? Give us an email address. Does it have to be a Gmail address? No, it does not. You can send it to any email address. Add as many people as you want to share it with. And then a great feature underneath is that you can add a note. So in adding the note, I think that's on this one here, the cool thing is I can just type in and say, hey Melody, this is the spreadsheet I was talking about. I need you to put data into column C. And when I hit send, she's going to get a notification in her email. So I don't have to send a separate email letting her know that I turned on a sharing link for her. I get to basically send the email and the file all in one. As soon as I hit send, it's out there. And the only way to get it back would be to change my sharing settings and to retrieve it or to remove someone from that ability to share. When I'm picking who I'm sending it to, I get to decide, what do I want them to do? Do I want them to be an editor so they can type changes in and be a part of my document? Or do I want them to just add comments? Or do I want them to just be able to read what I've done? That section is important because although you can look at past changes, what I find is with really long, intense documents, let's say I've created a policy manual and I need people's input before this policy manual becomes policy, I probably will not give them the edit function. I probably will give them the comment function. And what that does is they can go through my 50 pages of policy and they can add a comment on any line. They could tell me I have a typo, they could tell me I quoted that wrong, they can add any contributions they want, but it doesn't go into the actual formatting, it doesn't mess up my font, my spacing, my page breaks, none of that changes. I just get to click on a little comment they made, decide whether I want that change or not, and then I input it into my document. So the comment and the view are key ones that you might use in bigger, more advanced files. Of course, you do have this handy dandy advanced feature button. And if you click on the advanced, you get to choose a whole level of how you want to share and what it is you want to give away. So choosing who the owner of a file is sort of a key piece. I noticed in one workplace I was replacing someone who had been there before me. And so they were the owner of the Google documents and had invited me in as an editor so I could contribute to them. And then they left the company. And after they left the company, they deleted their files. So I did no longer have access to it. I just had access to an old version that I had saved. So particularly if you're passing the baton off of a project, or want to give someone else longevity because you know they'll be there longer than you and you're just consulting on a piece, then in that case, you really want to go ahead and change who the owner is. And any of those people you've given the privileges to, you can choose that one person to be the new owner. It is limited to just one person, however. So in sharing our files, we're looking at going through our drive, and I just bring us back to this screen because what I showed you so far on sharing your files was being inside one particular file and sharing that one file. But from your drive, you have the ability to share a whole folder. So you can You could share everything you've got. You could share one whole folder called Google Suite Presentation 2020, and everything in there is just under one share function. I do love clicking on Shared with Me. It's one of the ways I go find some of the documents that I'm looking for if I haven't opened them in a while, and it'll show you everything that your colleagues have shared with you but that they own. One other collaboration thing to touch on real quick, and I want to leave just a couple minutes for questions, so I'm going to buzz through this last part and just flash the screens at you, is that if we were in person, we get to talk and have body language and exchange ideas, and sometimes in front of customers we can't do that, and we're looking for a way to chat with someone without the customer hearing what we're trying to do. So a lot of people rely on Facebook Messenger, and then they come up against a wall that people either don't have a Facebook account, or in fact a firewall has blocked them from being able to use that in the workplace. So Google sort of solved that for us, that right within your Gmail you have a collaboration tool for chatting, and it's down at the bottom there where you get to choose a new chat. And so I saw this operate in one company I worked with where they switched to an open concept. And so a customer would come in, they would deal with a person at the front desk, and the front desk would have to ask someone something, but because there were no walls anymore, they didn't want the customer hearing what it was they were asking. So just right at their desk, they did this live chat through their email program with the person sitting at the desk right next to them, and said, hey, like, did this person pay their fees or not? Boom, you get your live chat. The customer doesn't even know that you're in a chat room. So again, when we think about just translating these skills to something we can use, go ahead and do something for fun. The slides that you're going to share with me, I don't care what the content is. It could be anything that you're putting content in on. And develop something for your workplace and just see what could happen. I do want to also give you freedom. I know our plates are full as our WEMIans right now. And so typically we're teaching this where someone has a week to be able to get back to us with the homework. So I just want to release you that don't stress about this, and if you can't get to it tonight, that's okay. Tomorrow we're going to touch on these other topics, and particularly the managing accounts is a special one and an important one for us. So I'd like to invite Jessica to pop back on and tell me in the last couple minutes if we have a couple key questions we should address. And I should say, if we run out of time, I'll take a look at the questions afterwards and I'll address them tomorrow.
Sorry about that. Hello, everyone. All right, so we do have a few questions, and there are, I'll give you the information. There are a few of them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I don't know if we'll get to 5, but let's try.
All right. Well, I'm going to do the top. Looks like 3. I'll give you the top 3, and then we'll see where you are. All right, so I'm going to see if I can share the questions. So let me know if I can share. Just give me a thumbs up if you see the question. But how does being an owner differ from being able to edit?
Really, it just means that you're the only one who could delete the file and change all of the settings on it. So an editor can come in and change any work you've done. They can delete any work you've done. But as an owner, that file won't disappear until you tell it to.
Excellent. Thank you. Oh, this is my question to everyone. Did you download Day 3 student book, which is right in your chat, so you can just download it right from there? So thank you. Here's the next question. In the file sharing, can you share a large document, i.e. video or PowerPoint?
Yeah, any size. In fact, that's what makes the share function in Google so awesome, is that if you know you have a gigantic file, by doing the share setting, you're not actually sending anything, you're not transmitting anything through an email or anything. You're just giving them an invitation to join you digitally in your file. So you won't have any time lag. You can do it instantly, and within 5 seconds, the person could join you in that document, no matter how big it is.
Would it replace Dropbox, for example?
Yeah. Dropbox, in Dropbox, yeah, it would.
Excellent, that's wonderful. All right, if I delete a file that I shared with someone else, would that file be deleted for them as well? And I think there was an adaptation from a question from yesterday that kind of echoes this.
Yes, it is deleted for them, but they did have the ability to share that file as many times and ways as they wanted. So if it's sensitive information that you're worried about sharing, maybe the share feature is not the one for you. Maybe, yeah, maybe
Secure.
yeah. So they can always save an older version of it, but when you're done and the project's over and you don't need that anymore, absolutely delete it and it's gone from them too.
Excellent. Thank you, Anne. I didn't say everyone else's name, but I'm sure you can read it. And then here's another question from Anne. What changes do random viewers get on the internet?
What changes do they get?
Random viewers get on the internet.
Maybe we're talking about when we could share that file as a web page. And if that's the case, a viewer doesn't get to make any changes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Anne says yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, Anne.
If I wanted to give my free how to use Excel and share that file online, I could share it online, but they don't have the access to change my file. They're just looking at it and they could save a copy of it.
Excellent. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else. That's it. Oh my God. Great questions.
You guys are the brightest and the best. I love it.
Yes, absolutely. So this ends day 2. Do you have anything else to add? You're good? Good. Excellent. So this completes day 2 of the Google Suite. We have one more day. Please join us tomorrow, same time, Thursday the 7th, I believe. And I just want to remind everybody that the post assessment will be done or delivered to you end of day tomorrow, or I should say end of the webinar tomorrow. And of course, did you remember to download your book, your student book for day 3? I know that Rochelle was so wonderful in sending day 1 and day 2 workbook to you as well. So we really appreciate you for doing that. So please download your day 3. And I'd like to thank everyone, and I'd like to thank Rochelle for her wonderful content and information. It's been extremely helpful. So I'm going to stay online for just a few more moments while everybody can download that book. And I wish you a great day. And thank you, Rochelle.
Thanks, Jessica. And Jessica, maybe you can put day 3's file right again in the chat so it's the most recent thing everybody can access.
Absolutely. Session 3. Oops.
Hey, way to go, Leanne. Good job pinning to your taskbar. I'm giving you a shout out. Good work.
Woohoo! Absolutely. All righty. Thank you, Rochelle. All right, I'm here for a couple more minutes just to make sure that you can download that particular book.